Done something differently than President Biden.
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
Kamala wouldn't change a thing, even though her radical agenda costs American lives.
Sefer Devarim, Parshah V'Zot HaBracha, on intergenerational wisdom. This week we complete the book of Deuteronomy and the entire Torah with Parshah V'Zot HaBracha, which means, and this is the blessing. The Parsha begins with the blessing.
Also, yeah, sorry about the political ad. I guess I was signed in on a different account, not on my main, so I still get ads. And I have no clue why I was getting ads for that. I mean, anyway, getting back into it.
Thing that Moshe gives to the Israelites before he dies. Part of its ending goes, the ancient God is a refuge, support are the arms everlasting. Thus Israel dwells in safety, untroubled is Jacob's abode, in a land of grain and wine, under heaven's dripping dew. O happy Israel, who is like you, a people delivered by the Lord. 5 verses later, Moshe, 120 years old, dies in the land of Moab without getting to enter the promised land. Given all that Moshe has achieved for his people, from the Exodus to the receiving of the Torah to getting the Israelites through the desert, this loss can feel like a tragedy. And the people of the Torah agreed. In Deuteronomy it says, and the Israelites bewailed Moses, the steppes of Moab, for 30 days. 1 verse later, though, we are reminded that God had a plan in place for when this was to happen. V'Yehoshua ben Nun malei ruach chachma, ki samach Moshe et yadav alav, v'shmo alav b'nei Yisrael v'yasu kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe. Now Joshua the son of Nun was filled with the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands upon him, and the Israelites heeded him, doing as the Lord had commanded Moses. V'lo kam navi od b'Yisrael k'Moshe asher yadav Adonai panim el panim. Never again did there arise in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord singled out face to face. This reminder that there's never been a prophet in Israel like Moses is affirmed in Maimonides' 13 Principles of Faith. He was the father of all prophets, of those who preceded him and of those who followed him. And yet the Jewish people were tasked with carrying on, and Joshua became Moshe's immediate successor. This laying of Moshe's hands on Joshua, which took place back in the book of Numbers, shows us that Joshua's wisdom was a product of his relationship to Moshe. A saying is mentioned in the Talmud in Tractate Bava Kama. While the wine belongs to its owner, the gratitude is given to the one who pours it.
Interesting.
If you were at a dinner party, for example, and a person poured you a glass of wine, You would thank the person who poured it for you, even if they did not themselves bring the wine. Here in the Talmud, it is explained that so too, although the prophetic spirit belonged to God, Joshua had Moses to thank for giving it to him. Today, we tend to value the idea of being an independent thinker, someone with all original ideas of our own. But through the example of Joshua, we learn that the power of humility in accepting mentorship. It is because of Joshua's loyalty to his teacher and his commitment to being a link in the chain of his people's continuity that he is imbued with wisdom. Pirkei Avot introduces Jewish ethics as transmitted within a succession paradigm of teachers and students. As the Jews were completing the events of the Torah and entering a new land, this would have been a reasonable time for a leader to seek to move beyond the past, even to put down the previous generation, whose experience involves slavery and homelessness, not being the bold warriors the Israelites were to become. Instead, Joshua's generation has gratitude for Moshe's and consequently inherits its wisdom. In our time, we can all too easily look at previous generations and dismiss them as unevolved fools. We should seek to, like Joshua, have the humility to recognize where our knowledge comes from. And still, we must learn from and progress past the failing of past leaders as we participate in the unfolding of moral revelation. Yes, we can embrace the power of progress. In addition to innovation, though, we can learn from our tradition the concept of 𝤅𝐤𝐤𝐕, the decline of the generations, that there is a likely and perhaps inevitable spiritual and moral downturn as we get further and further from the experience of Har Sinai. Knowing this, we are to cling to the wisdom of our elders. In Pirkei Avot, a different Joshua, Joshua ben Prachia, is credited with teaching. Appoint yourself a teacher and find yourself a friend. We can learn that those with seniority aren't enemies. Rather, the people we can learn from are on our side, and we should be on theirs. Jewish activists, educators, and community members can do great things, not only due to their talent and efforts, but also when they learn how to submit to a master guide, remain in dialogue with previous generations, and strive to represent something greater than themselves. In closing the Torah with this teaching about intergenerational wisdom, the Torah tells us that we're not simply witnessing a historic moment. We are being invited to receive timeless wisdom that will teach us how to live. That wisdom is not static. It has grown and grown for thousands of years, but each generation's wisdom must be grounded in the previous ones. A Talmudic tale describes Moshe asking God why the letters of the Torah included decorative crowns. God answers that after many generations, Rabbi Akiva will be able to derive meaning from them. God then helps Moshe time travel to Rabbi Akiva's Beit Midrash, where Moshe is unable to follow his new teachings. This disheartens Moshe. But then when Rabbi Akiva is asked where this new knowledge came from, he responds from Moses at Sinai. New knowledge can come about, but only when it is rooted in the old. Like Rabbi Akiva, we can innovate and have new insights, but we should have the humility to see our creativity rooted in what we've received from the past. In Jewish tradition, upon completing a book of the Torah, we say the words chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Let us be strong, and let us strengthen others as well. This is because when the Hebrew Bible continues with the book of Joshua, God uses that word chazak in telling Joshua, but you must be very strong and resolute to observe faithfully all the teaching that my servant Moses enjoined upon you. My hope, friends, is that in studying Torah together, we can be strengthened ourselves, we can strengthen one another, and we can learn from the wisdom of many, many previous generations. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
You're glowing.
Yeah, I have no clue why I'm not signed in on. All right, let's see. What are we going to go to next? Okay, I am signed in on this one, so no ads.
I'm going to open with a bit of an unpleasant thought. If God were to inform you that you have 30 minutes left to live, what would you do to fill that half hour? Throw aside the morning newspaper and do something significant, something that represents everything you stand for, everything you strive for. Well, in this
I don't like this question.
В'zot HaBracha, the Torah ends, and so does the illustrious career of Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher. And what does Moshe do in the last minutes of his life? The Torah tells us that he ascends the mountain of Nevo, and then 𤄅𝐤𝐴 Adonai et kol haaretz. God showed him the entire land. So wait, are we to understand that in the last minutes of his life, Moses became a tourist and went Israel sightseeing? No way. If God was a tour guide, something much more powerful, much deeper was going on here. And that's exactly what the famous 18th century Italian Kabbalist, the Ramchal, writes. In his commentary to the Torah called Megillat Sitarim, he says that if Moshe had been allowed to enter Israel, it would have burst open the full spiritual potential of the land. It would have made it impossible for any future nation to conquer the land of Israel. God had other plans, so he allowed Moshe just to gaze at the land from afar. The Ramchal explains that this too had an impact, and it served to allow future generations of Jews to make it easier for them to conquer the land. Now, this commentary of the Ramchal contains within it a huge message for all of us. When Jews interact with the land, it brings to fruition the vast reserves of potential spiritual energy contained within the land. So that when someone on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu just gazes at the land, boom, that has an impact. When Jews visit the land, like right now during the holiday of Sukkot, that constitutes a spiritual fertilization of the land. My cousins Gary and Lisa just sent me an invitation to the dedication of their new apartment in Jerusalem. When a Jew purchases an apartment in the land of Israel, that's a warm embrace of the land, which causes its holiness to ripen. When they'll make aliyah and live in that apartment permanently, wow, that's literally unleashes untold rivers of light that flood the land. Now, you and I may not see that light, but Kabbalists like the Ramchal see it, and they write about it. So that's why we here at Beit El Institutions started this newsletter called Beyond the Four Amot. In it, through videos and articles, we explain that every single advance towards the land of Israel and towards Torah study untaps inner strengths and infuses spiritual courage into our nation. So as we end the Torah this week and started anew in synagogues across the globe, here's a call to action. Simple. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and get your friends to subscribe to our email newsletter. Links to both are below the YouTube video screen. Shabbat Shalom to all from Beit El, and of course, a happy Sukkot holiday.
Shalom. We've come to the end of the yearly cycle of the Torah portions. Every week we've been talking about an aspect of the weekly portion. And now we've completed, this week we're completing the fifth of the 5 books of Moshe, Sefer Dvarim. We are reading the last Parsha this week on Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah, the festival of the rejoicing of Torah, is the time when we read the very last portion of the Torah, and the same day we begin reading first section of the Parsha of Breshit, the first section of the book of Genesis, and thus the cycle continues, and we get this idea of the continuity, the cycle of the Torah that never changes. We find ourselves every week in the Parshiot. They never grow old, they never grow stale. We find ourselves anew in the circumstances surrounding our lives and the very stuff of our existence, we find allusions and sometimes very clear references to what we're feeling, to what we're experiencing every single week in the Torah portion. So it's been a very exciting ride all throughout the year as we've been studying the Torah portions. And every year we try to go deeper and deeper and uncover yet a new level of meaning that we haven't seen before. And the experience every year is more and more enriching. This is certainly our goal. And the past few parshiot, as Moshe, our master, has been preparing to take his leave of his beloved people of Israel, they have a certain ethereal quality to them. These parshiot, they feel somehow otherworldly. This tremendous imagery of Moshe giving his parting blessings and his words of rebuke and praise to the children of Israel, and they are so laden with messianic tension and with the portent of what lies in the future. And now, in the very last portion of the Torah, the book of Deuteronomy, Devarim, the Parshah of V'zot HaBracha, beginning in chapter 33 of Deuteronomy. And this is the blessing that Moshe, the man of God, the only person in history ever called by the Torah, by Hashem himself, Hashem's testimony, the man of God. This is the blessing that Moshe, the man of God, bestowed upon the children of Israel before his death. And he speaks to every one of the tribes of Israel according to the inner nature and essence and calling and destiny of that tribe. And he brings the whole thing together on a very beautiful level of some magnificent tapestry containing visions of past, present, and future for the children of Israel. And at the end of this parsha, we take our leave of Moshe. And it seems like a very difficult thing for us to comprehend, this ending of this person who, after all, was only a person, but yet so totally selfless, so totally righteous, so totally dedicated to his people, the servant of God who died at the kiss of God himself, as it were, 120 years old. His eye had not dimmed and his vigor had not diminished. And Moshe, of course, the one thing that he sought was to come into the land of Israel. That was the one thing that was denied him by God for reasons known to him. Instead, he was only able to see into the precious land of Israel, something that we take totally for granted today. All of us have the opportunity to live in the land of Israel. And the Parshah of V'zot HaBracha ends, never again has there arisen in Israel a prophet like Moshe, whom Hashem had known face to face, as evidenced by all the signs and wonders that Hashem sent him to perform in the land of Egypt against Pharaoh and all his courtiers and all his lands, and by all the strong hand and awesome power that Moshe performed before the eyes of all Israel. With those words, we conclude the portion of V'zot HaBracha and the awesome experience of the tremendous rejoicing, the dancing, the celebration with the scrolls of the Torah in the synagogue on Simchat Torah is the day in which we conclude this parsha, and immediately at the same moment continue by calling up another person, and we begin to read in the book of Genesis. We roll the Torah all the way back to the beginning, and our lives are just passing before our very eyes as we roll the Torah from the end to the beginning and delve again into the beginning. And as of next week, next Shabbat, we'll be reading about the creation all over again, finding new insights and new revelations and mysteries into the process, finding ourselves again witnesses to Hashem, bringing all creation into being out of nothing. The Torah ends here, but begins at the same moment. And this is one of the things that we emphasize by beginning to read from Parshat Breshit, from the beginning of the portion of Genesis, immediately as we conclude Deuteronomy. There is no seam. It is totally seamless. Our experience with Hashem in this world is totally seamless, and the Torah is one continuous process. And it ends here with the words, before the eyes of all Israel, in Hebrew, le'enei kol Yisrael. And then immediately we begin reading Parshat Breshit, the first word in the Torah, Bereshit, in the beginning, begins with the letter Bet. And if you will connect the end of the Torah to the beginning of the Torah, which in fact is what we do and which is what our goal is, we find a word is formed.
Lev.
By the last letter of the Torah and the first letter of the Torah. The last letter of the Torah here in Parshah V'Zot HaBracha being the Lamed of Le'enei Kol Yisrael, to the according in front of the eyes of all of Israel, and the first word of the Torah, Bereshit, the first letter being Bet, and the word that's formed is Lev, heart. The word heart, Lamed Bet, is formed by the last letter of this portion, the Lamed, and the first letter of the coming portion in Genesis, the Bet. Together they are Lev, and this is the main message that this entire season has transmitted to us, and indeed the entire Torah gives over to us in our entire goal of Torah study is to summon forth the quality, the presence of the hearts. And our sages teach us, 𝐄�𐤁𐤓�12 is a beautiful expression that our sages tell us in the Talmud. Hashem requires the hearts. This is what he wants. We also need our intellect, we also need logic, but Hashem requires the hearts. And this is a message which is superimposed onto the very Torah itself as we connect the end to the beginning, because there is no end and there is no beginning, and we begin the cycle all over again this week on Simchat Torah, the festival of the rejoicing of Torah. We see before us the vision of the word that's formed by the last Parsha and the new Parsha, the word Lev, the heart, reminding us as we continue in our odyssey of Torah study, of serving Hashem, as we go now from the beautiful days of Tishrei into the coming year. We remember the main thing that Moshe is telling us is that Hashem requires the heart.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is 𝐤�𐤁𐤕, and I'm podcasting from moadim in Israel. Annual celebrations, such as anniversaries or birthdays, are a fascinating concept. They seem to be somewhat universal, spanning pretty much all cultures and national borders. They are celebrated both in religious circles and in purely secular circles. Missing a birthday is like missing a moment in time. It simply cannot be recovered. Missing an anniversary is like a crime of omission. It is not something that one wants to forget, lest there not be another one. But these are only two of the most common forms of annual celebrations. There are plenty of others that are not so personal. There are annual celebrations of great events, like the founding of a nation or a huge victory in war. There are annual feasts like Thanksgiving, which don't celebrate anything in particular, but somehow hit the spot for anybody looking for a reason to celebrate. There are religious celebrations of all sorts. To some degree, they define the religion, since they are the days on the calendar that bring back the great moments in the history of the faith. And there are celebrations that transcend all religious and national boundaries, though they tend to be a little on the unknown and less celebrated side of the spectrum. It seems that we need something unique to us to really find a reason to celebrate. It is interesting that we have picked the cycle of the year as a means of scheduling our celebrations. There is nothing in the earth revolving around the sun that warrants such recognition. We are simply returning to the approximate position in space relative to the sun that we were about 365 days earlier. In the case of an ancient celebration like those associated with religions, we are in that same place as the earth was umpteen centuries in the past. What is the connection? There is none, but we celebrate nevertheless because we need a reason to celebrate and a time to do it. Judaism has more than its share of these annual celebrations. There's another one coming up every few months, and in some months there are quite a few. Passover is a classic example of this. It is an opportunity to re-experience, to some degree, the events of the Exodus from Egypt over 3,000 years in the past. It does seem impossible to relive something that took place so long ago, but Judaism is loaded with these sorts of things. In this particular Jewish month, we have celebrated Rosh Hashanah, the anniversary of the world and the beginning of the year, Yom Kippur, the annual Day of Atonement, and Sukkot, the week-long annual celebration of the harvest and of remembering what life was like wandering around the Sinai wilderness. At the end of that week of Sukkot, there is another celebration that is somewhat nondescript. It is simply called Shemini Atzeret, roughly translated as the closing eighth. This means that it is the close of this festival, which lasts for 8 days. But there is another celebration that Judaism has come to observe on this day or the next, depending on if one lives in Israel or somewhere else. This celebration is called Simchat Torah, rejoicing over the Torah. The origins of this celebration are shrouded in mystery. There is nothing in the Torah or the Bible that suggests such an event. There is no suggestion that the Torah was given on this day or anything remotely related to that. There is no indication in the primary rabbinic texts, such as the Mishnah, the Talmud, or the Midrash, that gives even the slightest hint that something called Simchat Torah existed on the Jewish calendar. Yet it is one of the best known days on the Jewish calendar and is celebrated enthusiastically by Jews all over the world. So where did it come from? The answer, which is no secret, is that this is the day that the annual cycle of reading the Torah comes full circle. The last Parsha in the Torah is read on this day, and the beginning of the first Parsha is also read. This is the only official Parsha which is read on a day which may not be Shabbat. The current cycle of finishing the Torah every year on this day has been in place for probably about 1,800 years, though nobody is 100% sure of when exactly it came to be. But beginning about 1,000 years ago, this practice became fairly universal among Jews around the world. By about 1,200 years ago, it was completely universal. If we go back about 2,500 years, we would have found that there was no Jewish practice of reading the Torah publicly at all. Sometime around then, public Torah readings were instituted in the growing Jewish community of Second Temple times. Sometime after the temple was destroyed, around 2,000 years ago, there was a practice to complete the Torah every 3 years or so. This cycle likely revolved around the first day of the first month of the Jewish calendar, the month of Nisan, in which Passover falls. But the sections read each week were much shorter than our current parshas, so the cycle took 3 years to finish. This remained the standard custom of Jewish communities within a short traveling distance of Israel, such as those in Egypt. But for the Jews in much bigger communities, such as what is now Iraq and in many other parts of the world, the practice was to complete the Torah once a year on what is now called Simchat Torah. It took quite a long time for the 3-year cycle to ultimately be totally subsumed by the 1-year cycle, but eventually it happened. The last vestiges of the 3-year cycle may have been in certain communities in Egypt or in Israel. There was one town in Egypt where different synagogues completed the Torah according to different schedules. But in the end, the 1-year cycle won out, since Jews, like everyone else, prefer their celebrations to come on an annual basis. The idea of making a celebration out of this emerged slowly, almost imperceptibly from a historical perspective. From the first mention of this practice in an ancient and undated work from somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 years ago to now, there has been no shortage of changes as to how this celebration took place. At first, it was probably rather limited, with no particular customs observed, but every community doing whatever they had decided to do. But like all things Jewish, eventually certain things became established and institutionalized. It was probably around the 16th century that the idea of a community-wide celebration became accepted. Over the next few hundred years, the practice of dancing around the Torah and giving every male in the synagogue an opportunity to bless the Torah in public became firm parts of Jewish tradition. This is what has been in place for at least a few hundred years, and there has been no reason to suggest anything would change in the future. That is, no reason until this past year. As many people know, Jewish or not, the October 7th attack on Jewish communities around the Gaza Strip took place on Simchat Torah, according to the Jewish calendar. The ensuing war, of course, is still going on over 1 year later. If anything, it is greatly expanded and now includes a major battle against the Iranian-backed terrorist army in southern Lebanon, Hezbollah. The possibility of this erupting into a regional war, including Iran and possibly other armies, has never gone away and certainly looms on the horizon. Owing to the nature of Judaism and the fact that Jews tend to have long collective memories, the odds are that this will be remembered long into the future. Nobody knows how Simchat Torah will be celebrated this year, whether in Israel or outside of Israel. It's a good bet that outside of Israel, it would be more or less business as usual. But within many religious communities, there is great uncertainty about what to do. Do we celebrate or do we not? Do we temper our celebrations with some collective moment of sadness, or do we leave them unspoiled by grief? It is a difficult question, and nobody can claim the right to answer it for everyone else. The trauma is still too fresh, and the war is still in high gear. Soldiers are still dying, and missiles are still landing within Israel's borders by the hundreds daily. What are we supposed to do? On top of all the trauma within Israel, there is a growing sense of abandonment by much of the rest of the world. Israel already had many enemies, but the past year has shown that both large social movements all over the Western world and political leaders everywhere would drop Israel like a hot potato at a moment's notice. Whether these social and political trends are truly an indication of general attitudes towards Israel and the Jews is anybody's guess. It could be that they are just the latest thing trending in the social world, or the most convenient position for many political leaders to take under the circumstances, and that they will all vanish like smoke once the war ends. But here in Israel, people are not so optimistic. If anything, many Israelis believe that these signs are simply the exposure of something that was there all along, that was looking for an excuse to become revealed. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here in my sukkah on a porch in my house presenting this podcast. I'm confident that things will turn out well for both Israel and for the Jews. I'm thinking about Simchat Torah and the fact that this book has kept the Jews going for thousands of years with no sign of them going the way of the typewriter. Simchat Torah, whether an out-and-out celebration or a subdued memorial of a tragic day, or something somewhere in between, represents that perseverance. Jews keep on keeping on, fighting whatever obstacles fate places in their way, and always finding another way to celebrate or to mourn. This is what we do. As a final note, to give a brief reference to the last Parsha in the Torah, it is called 𝐤ozot HaBracha. This is the blessing. It tells of the final blessings Moshe gave to each of the tribes of Israel collectively. After that, there is a brief and somewhat poetic section which talks about the fate of the Israelites and their relationship with God. Within that section, we read, quote, "And Israel will have dwelt securely, alone, the spring of Yaakov, in the land of grain and wine, and its heavens shall drip with dew. Fortunate are you, Israel, who is like you, a nation saved by Hashem, a shield, your helper." Perhaps it is appropriate that this verse and a half will be read on Simchat Torah. This just says it all: secure, alone, surviving, protected by God. May we all have a good year and find many reasons to rejoice.
This is Rabbi David Foreman, and you are watching Aleph Beta. Welcome to וזות HaBracha. So over these last couple of weeks, we've been talking about Psalm 90, and I've suggested to you that Psalm 90 resonates with this week's Parsha, וזות HaBracha, the opening words of Psalm 90, Moshe Ish HaElokim. The only time Moses is called that is in the beginning of וזות HaBracha. And there were a number of other connections too. And the theory that I'm going to sketch out to you is that Psalm 90 is a kind of portrayal of Moses, almost in terms of what's going through his mind at the moment that he's blessing the people in וזות HaBracha. He's going to bless them and then ascend the mountain to die, to go up to God. And what gives him the strength to do that? To let go of his dream of taking the people into the land. He's able to do it because he looks back at a time, not when he blessed the people, but when he prayed for them. In the aftermath of the golden calf, when he looks back on that, somehow he finds peace. Let me begin this final leg in our journey through Psalm 90 by asking you a theological question. Does man have the power to change the divine plan for history? If God has some sort of plan that's dear to his heart, that he wants realized in human history, do we human beings have the power to influence the Almighty, to get him to, so to speak, change his mind about how that plan comes about? Is prayer powerful enough to do that? My own instincts on this matter would have been to say no, but that's before I read Psalm 90 carefully. What I want to suggest to you today is that the answer to this question is in fact a resounding yes. Human beings can have that kind of almost unimaginable influence on nothing less than the way the divine plan actually plays out in human history. And where you see clear evidence of this, I think, is in how Psalm 90 portrays for us Moses' prayer to God in the aftermath of the golden calf, what that prayer was really all about, and how God responded to it. Let me take you on a journey through this prayer, through this argument that Moses makes to God, as Psalm 90 seems to articulate it. The psalm begins with the words, Hashem ma'on ata hayidilanu b'dar b'dar. God, you have been our habitation, our abode, the being in whom we reside, from generation to generation, forever, going back all the way into the infinite recesses of time. So here in these first couple verses, we get this portrayal of God, the infinite being, the master of all, who encompasses everything. But after this, we hear about something very different. We hear about man, the finite, limited being, the being who dies. Tashev enosh adaka, you return us to the dust, God. And in so doing, you say, in effect, Shuvu b'nei Adam, return, O you children of men. In other words, death is something of an impetus for us to get our affairs in order in this world. Without it, we could procrastinate forever and ever and never get around to doing anything useful in our lives. Death, really, is God's way of saying, Shuvu b'nei Adam, return to me, you children of men. Live a good life. You only get one chance. Okay, so right at the beginning of the psalm, we get the infinite nature of God, and then we get the very finite and limited nature of human beings. And now the psalmist becomes interested in a problem, a kind of issue, which is how do these two beings relate to one another? Because they really are so very different. One of the most striking differences between them, perhaps, is how each of them experiences time. Ki elef shanim be'enecha ki yom etmol ki yavor. 1,000 years, God, in your eyes, it's like yesterday. Zram tam shena yiyu. The flow of our whole life, it seems so long to us, but it's like a dream. We die and then it just goes away. You see what's happening here? We're hearing about the contrast between the way you, God, an infinite being, and us people, finite beings, experience everything. Existence might be permanent for you, but not for us. A long time for us, it's a blink of an eye for you. Okay, so now as the psalm continues, it's going to illustrate some problems that arise from this contrast. So for example, let's talk about anger, God's anger at human misdeeds. So God, what you might see as just a regular, ordinary display of justified anger, well, guess what? We're more fragile than you are. We're consumed by your anger, terrified by your wrath. And while we're at it, let's talk about how we each experience human failing. You see, with us, we sin one day and the next day you move on. That's our human perspective. But you, God, you're an infinite being, so you look at it differently. Shat avonotenu lenegdecha. You establish our sins before your eyes. Alumenu, our evil, is illuminated by the eternal light of your gaze. You see, God, you're just too permanent a being for us. We do something in our finite realm, and once it passes into your infinite realm, it's always there for you to look at and remember. When we committed the sin, we didn't experience it that way. We just did it, and then we moved on. But that's not how you experience it. It's more permanent for you. After all, in your infinite world, everything is permanent. And therefore, God, look where this gets us. There you are up in heaven, and you're going to be angry, and it'll seem to you like you're angry for a reasonably short time. But for us, it's our whole lives. Kol yameinu panu bevratecha. All of our days will pass in your wrath. So is that really the way you want it to be, God? That our whole life long, 70, 80 years, you were mad at us? Is this really how you want us to remember you? These are just the problems that come with the territory when an infinite being like you has to relate to finite, fragile beings like us. And therefore, God, Moses, as the psalmist portrays him, continues, I have some proposals I'd like to make. And here we get to the psalmist's paraphrase of Moses' final supplication at the golden calf. Shuva Hashem, return, please. Ad matai, how long do you really want to be angry for? V'nachem alavadecha, please change your mind about your servants. Don't do away with them because of this terrible sin of the calf. And if you do keep them around, as I request, then also don't allow your anger at this sin to define your relationship to generation after generation of your servants. If you really look at the language carefully here, by the way, you'll see something very beautiful and subtle going on. The first verb in that line, shuv, return. Here, it's something that Moses is asking God to do, but earlier in the psalm, that same word got used differently. You see, the first time around, it was God who was saying shuv to mankind. Tashev enosh adaka vatomer shuvu b'nei adam. Death was God's way of saying, return to me. You only get one chance, you human beings. You better not mess it up. Now Moses, in a daring kind of way, is actually taking God's words and turning them on their head. You know, God, if we only get one life around here, well, then it's not just us who should return. You should return too. As you yourself said, we only get one time around in this world. It's all so fleeting, our life. Don't allow your anger to define our whole experience of life. Hinachem alavadecha. Return, please. Reconsider how you're relating to your servants. Instead of just expressing anger, sab'enu baboker chastecha u'narananav nismach b'chol yameinu. Satiate us with your kindness, God, so that we can have some happiness in our lives. And now we come to the Psalm's great unexpected climax. Yira'eh el avadecha pa'alecha. Let your work, let your project be visible, be seen by your servants. Whatever this means, we'll explore it in a minute. V'hi noam Hashem Elokeinu aleinu. Let your pleasantness, let your presence descend upon us. U'ma'aseh yadeinu konana aleinu. And establish the works of our hands. What does all this mean? What's the psalmist talking about here? Well, as it turns out, all of this language, it actually comes from somewhere. The psalmist is making one last intertextual leap, bringing us back to one last story in the 5 books of Moses. This time, the story is the song at the sea after Pharaoh's chariots were destroyed by the waves. Here, back in Psalm 90, look at these 3 elements which we just read. The notion of God's works, what God has done, his project. Put that together with the idea of ma'aseh yadeinu konana aleinu, the works of one's hands being established. Take all of these 3 elements together. It's actually an echo of the very end of the Song of the Sea. After the song expresses thanks for the immediate triumph over the armies of Pharaoh, It looks to the future. And here's what it says. When you, God, when you ultimately bring these people into the land, Machona l'shivtecha pa'alta Hashem, you're going to make a place for yourself where you can reside. Mikdash Hashem konanu yadecha. This holy place, God, you yourself with your hands, you will establish it. Those are the three words that get echoed again in Psalm 90. Psalm 90 is harking back to this, but why? Well, if you think about the Song of the Sea, it was actually painting a vision of a future that never came to be. The Song of the Sea suggested that the grand climax of the Exodus from Egypt, when the people were going to be established in the land, was that after the people were established, God would establish a place for himself. We call it the Beit HaMikdash, the temple. Now, if you think about the Song of the Sea and what it's really saying here, when you think about the construction of this place for God in this world, what we're really talking about is the convergence of the finite and the infinite once more, which has really been the whole theme of Psalm 90. You see, here was the plan that the Song of the Sea was talking about, the way history should have unfolded. The infinite being was going to come into this finite world and make himself a place that would have like an infinite quality to it. It would last. It would endure from generation to generation. That's Mikdash Hashem konanu yadecha, the Mikdash God that your hands would build, you would establish it. Do you see what's happening here? God was supposed to make the Mikdash. That was the plan. But it's not what actually happened. The plan changed. When did it change and why did it change? The psalmist tells you. It changed because Moses asked God to change it. He did that in the aftermath of the golden calf. The psalmist in Psalm number 90 takes all of those words from the end of the Song of the Sea and recombines them to form the end of the psalmist's elaboration of Moses' prayer. The words are the same, but recombined, they have an entirely different meaning. Yira'el avadecha pa'alecha. God, allow us to see the realization of this grand, divine architectural project. But don't let it be something that you build. Ma'aseh yadeinu konana aleinu. We're going to make it for you. Let it be the works of our hands that you establish. Moses is arguing that the golden calf changes everything. You might have had a nicer house, God, if you built it yourself. But now I have to ask you to settle for something else. Allow us to be the ones to build your home. Why? Why do you need to settle for that? It's the only solution to the problem I've been describing to you, God. Because we built something with our hands. It only lasted a short time and it was destroyed, this terrible calf. But in your eyes, Shat avonotenu lenegdecha, you see it in infinite time forever. It degrades our relationship with you. If that vision of the terrible thing we made will always infinitely be with you, and I can't erase it from your gaze, then I need to ask you to allow us to build something else with our own hands that can be a counterweight to that vision in your eyes. Give us the opportunity to make something else. Give us the opportunity to make something you love that you can always look at. Give us an opportunity to make a place for you with us. That was Moshe's plea. So this is how it happened that we came to build the tabernacle and ultimately the temple. It wasn't the original plan. Mere mortals would now build his house. It's an enduring testament to the unimaginable power of prayer. I hope this series has given you a bit of an insight into what the study of the book of Psalms can be like. It can illuminate the spiritual backstory of great climactic events in the Torah in marvelous ways. As for Psalm 90, it in the end tells a story. It's the story of the Ish Elokim and his prayer. back at the golden calf, when Moses was first a man of God, he had saved the people, and he had done so by making a brazen request that God actually granted, by asking God to let them build him a home. And in so doing, he not only saved the people, he allowed the relationship between God and the people to remain warm and vibrant. Now in וזות HaBracha, that man of God would part from the people, crossing into heaven even as they crossed into the land. But he would part from them, knowing that his prayer was successful. The people, arrayed as the stars of the heavens, they would endure, and their relationship with God would endure too. It would not be dominated forever by the angry memories of the calf. Instead, God would bring this people into Israel, their home, and once there, the people would make a home for the master of the universe himself, the one who brought them there.
Hi YouTube, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And for even more amazing Torah videos, check out 𝐷 Just click the link below.
Hi. This is 𝐤�𐤁𐤓 𝐵zot, the grand finale, and it's entitled Moshe's Bittersweet Glimpse of Jewish History. 𝐤�𤁁𐤓 relates a cryptic reference to something which must have evoked tremendous emotions in Moshe Rabbeinu. The Sifrei also covers it, as noted by Rashi, and this is the fact that Moshe was able to see all of Jewish history and all of world history. The Medrash Tanchuma is a little bit vague. It says from beginning of time to end of time, but the Sifrei spells it out from creation all the way until the resurrection of the dead. So I'd like to focus on some of the specific language that Medrash Tanchuma uses, see if we can figure out exactly what is going on here. The first thing that jumps out at you is that the examples given in history involved two people. Shimshon, it says Shimshon made Midan, Barak Abinoam min Naphtali. So why these two people? What is the message here? I was thinking that, of course, the story of Shimshon is someone who was given extraordinary talents of strength, and those talents enable him to fulfill what he was supposed to do, protect the Jews from the Plishtim, kill many Plishtim. And the other story of Barak ben Abinoam is the story of someone who was promised by God that he's going to be victorious in a war. He was the general, yet he refused to go to that war unless he was accompanied by the prophetess Devorah Neviah. So if you put the two together, I was thinking how Moshe might have reacted to that, because we know that Moshe Rabbeinu was, grew up in a palace of Paro, and he looked out upon the suffering of the Jewish people, and he didn't have a superhuman strength like Shimshon had, nor did he have a promise from God that if he got involved in the suffering of his people, that everything would go well for him. He had to communicate with God yet he jumped into the fray, and that tremendous leadership is what, of course, got the attention of God and why he was chosen for this amazing role as Moshe Rabbeinu. So I think Moshe might have felt good that seeing the difference between a great general and a great leader, and what they did or didn't do with their gifts they had, and how he was able to do so much with just his strength of character and his commitment and his integrity. Another point that the Medrash makes is a very simple one, that Moshe could now, after seeing this extraordinary vision of history unfolding, he could go back in the next world to Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov and testify that Hashem kept their promise. Hashem brought them in, there is Israel, to the promised land, just like they were told. Finally, I'd like to focus on another set of words that the Medrash Tanchuma focuses on, and that is that in every generation, Moshe saw Shoftav, Manigav, Sha'av, Tzadikav. In other words, so you can imagine for yourself, if you're able to take in all of Jewish history in one sitting, you would see the direct cause and effect, the direct relationship between how a generation was able to grow and succeed, both spiritually and physically, is all based on the strength and character of their leaders. And so Moshe saw the strong leaders and the weak leaders. And again, I'd like to believe that this was a tremendous consolation for him, because he himself took the Jewish people from slavery and brought them through to get the Torah and right to the border of Eretz Yisrael. So his strong arm guiding the Jewish people was what enabled them to be poised to go into the land of Israel. And so in relation to how history unfolds, he could see the great success of what he did. So finally, what seems apparent to me, again, another consequence of seeing all of history unfolding, is that if Moshe had some, obviously, frustration, disappointment, that he got to the Jews right to the border, but couldn't take them into the land of Israel, couldn't finish the job, couldn't finish his mission, he did see that the moral teachings that he gave over to the Jewish people through the Torah and to the whole world through the Torah was able to take them all the way to the finish line. So although he didn't bring the Jewish people into Eretz Yisrael, he brought the world to its conclusion because of the strength of the ethical ideas that he imparted to the world. And that, again, must have been a source of great strength, great consolation, and exhilaration. Have a great Shabbos and a great Sukkot.
Interesting. Let's see what I can find.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Before I give my brief teaching, I would like to.
So this.
Shalom, everyone.
This video, October 6th, 2023, literally the day before. Wow. Literally so much changed.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Before I give my brief teaching, I would like to thank everyone and let you know how much pleasure it has been for me to be a guide through the Parshiot these last however many months they've been. And now, as we come to the end of the Torah, this is the final Parsha. I just wanted to reach out and tell you what an amazing experience it's been with me, and I appreciate all of you going on this wonderful journey, and I hope to see you. It's a never-ending journey. Just as we end the Torah, we begin it again. In fact, if you do go to a Simchat Torah celebration, you know that you don't just read the end Parsha, וזאת HaBracha, without immediately beginning Breshit. So it's a never-ending study, and I appreciate you being on this journey for me. וזאת HaBracha means this is the blessing. These are Moshe's last words to the tribes and to the people. So you expect him to, first of all, give what we think of as a blessing, whatever that may be. For me, the paradigmatic blessing is the priestly blessing, and that is something that contains words like blessing you and guarding over you, shining light on you. But what we read, and if you're a careful reader of the Parsha, and it's only a page and a half, so I recommend that everybody read it, what you read doesn't really sound like a blessing. Each tribe is singled out. Shimon is omitted. Each tribe is singled out, and it sounds more like words of description about what the tribes are about, what their strengths and weaknesses are. Some of the descriptions are one sentence and very neutral. Others sound almost like a rebuke. And there's a small handful that are extensive and sound like words of praise. So every year when I read it, the first question that comes to me is, why are these called blessings? Because they don't really sound like blessings. And it occurred to me that the reason why they're blessings is because one of the greatest gifts that we can give to another human being is to illuminate for them, and I'll just use words from Shanti's poem, shine a light on that part of their personality or character, or actually when you glimpse their soul, and enable them to see that themselves. Very often we can see things in other people, but we're blind to what's going on with ourselves. So what is Moshe doing here? He's giving descriptions to the tribes of what their strengths and weaknesses are, and really shining a light on how they can know, therefore, how to be, what to improve on, what to concentrate on, and how they should combine with other tribes that can perhaps complement them and supplement whatever it is that they need help with. So that perhaps is the biggest blessing that we can get from another person, for them to shine a bright light on us, reveal our souls to ourselves, and in that way, give us a roadmap to what our potential is and help us to realize that. So for example, in this last Parsha, Moshe is referred to as Ish Elohim, a man of God. And to me, along with this theme that I just laid out for you, this Ish Elohim is something that enables one to realize the God-given potential. And Moshe, out of everyone, is someone who has realized his potential. He's come as close to anyone as being a projection of what it means to be B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. So if the greatest gift that we can give to ourselves and to others is self-understanding and insight, then we can move towards this goal of realizing our potential and being the best version of ourselves that we can be. Obviously, it's a work in progress. We ask at the Sea of Reeds, we ask God who is like you when we're singing joyously, after we are able to cross the sea and we see the Egyptians behind us unable to overtake us. We say, who is like you? Mi chamocha. Now in our Parsha here, Moshe is saying to each one of us, who is like you, emphasizing our uniqueness so that we can maximize our strengths and improve our weaknesses. That reminded me of a wonderful little story that Martin Buber tells in his Stories of the Hasidim. Rabbi Finley's talked about this book many times. It contains lots of little, some of them are only one sentence, such as the one I'm going to read to you now. Little koans, little paragraphs, wonderful little parables that have great wisdom, lots of humor, and important lessons. So here it is. It's called The Query of Queries, and it is a little story about Reb Zusia of Hanipol, who was a Hasidic Rebbe in the 18th century. Before his death, Rabbi Zusia said, "In the coming world, they will not ask me, 'Why were you not Moses?' They will ask me, 'Why were you not Zusia?'" So I hope for all of us, with the transformative process that we just went through for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that we can each have a light shined on ourselves to discover what it is about our soul and our essence that we want to take out and cherish and shine into the world, and that we can in turn become the best, or at least a better version of ourselves this year. Shabbat Shalom.
Hey everyone, today we're diving into the final portion of the Torah, Parshah V'Zot HaBracha. This parsha is unique, standing apart in its significance.
We are at the last parsha of the Torah, וזות HaBracha. We started with Bereshit a year ago, and we've done every single parsha, and now we've gotten to the end. Just like we're getting to the end of Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. Tonight is Hoshana Rabbah, and tomorrow night is Simchat Torah. So we're going to concentrate on the last parsha of the Torah. And I think as is well known, as soon as on Simchat Torah, we will finish this parsha, וזות HaBracha. And then, on the assumption that a congregation is more than one Sefer Torah, you bring another Sefer Torah out and you begin immediately from Bereshit. So this fulfills what is written in Sefer Yetzirah. Na'ut sofan b'techilatan b'sofan. The end is wedged in the beginning and the beginning in the end. This is such a significant ritual that we do, that we end the Torah and we immediately begin it again. And so this coming Shabbos, we're already in Bereshit. So I want to read the last verse of the Torah. That's what we're going to concentrate here on, the last verse of the Torah. And of course, like every verse in the Torah, there are many, many, many different explanations and commentaries. We're going to concentrate on one of them. And here's what it says. First, it says that there was, the last few verses is, the Torah testifies that there never rose a prophet like Moshe, that God spoke to face, and all of the miracles and wonders that Moshe did in Egypt. And the very last verse says, Ulachal hayad hachazaka, l'chal hamorah hagadol, asher asa Moshe le'einei kol Yisrael. And all of the strong arm and all of the awesome power that Moshe did in the eyes of all of Israel. So we're going to discuss what's the significance of this being the last verse in the Torah. So I'm going to point out, even though we're going to wait a minute to see the significance, but since...
All right, that's a good, I guess that's a good place to start. Let's see. Barechu et Adonai Yimvorach, Baruch Adonai Yimvorach leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. And then here it goes. וזאת הברכה, וזאת הברכה אשר ברך משה איש האלוהים את בני ישראל לפני מותו, ויאמר אדוני מסיני בא וזרח מסיעי למו הופיע מהר הפרן ואתה מריבבות. It's about to get to a really interesting part. Specifically, so this actually echoes something that's later in Habakkuk. Is it Adonai Sinai Mahar Sinai Vo? I forget how it is in another one, but you have this parallel. Messier Lamo Hofia, so he, shining forth from the from Mount Paran. Then he approached Merivavot Kodesh with his like myriads, Kodesh, the holy myriads. Miyamino, from his right hand, or at his right hand, Ishtat. And so this is something that's like a lot of people argue, okay, what is Ishtat? And one of the theories that I've heard, and again, it's very contentious because basically, so one way this gets translated is, so Aish is fire. That's true. Dat is a Persian loan word. So it wouldn't, I mean, I guess, if you're viewing this within the context of like, everything was written, before, and even like, so that's like things are being revealed progressively. But the thing is that they wouldn't have understood what this meant at the time without, like advanced knowledge because of it being a Persian loanword and them having not really encountered the Persians at this point. So one of the theories is that the Daled was actually a resh and that the Taf was actually a hey. And that's based off of the fact that if you have a slight bit of, basically you curve the Daled and you get rid of the connecting part of the leg of the Taf that separates it from like the resh. And I mean, it has to do with just the modular nature of Hebrew. But again, this would imply that it was changed. And so it's like, it's very contentious, but specifically because this idea of being at the right hand of God, this Ashtat, that's like very uncertain. But the whole fire of the law thing has been connected with Shekhinah. So even then, without having to say that it's, a resh and a hey, there still is potential connections to that tradition of like the divine feminine in Judaism. But yeah. Kodesh meimino eshtat lamo. Also, it's possible that's ashedat, because there's ashedot, which I think means the slope of a mountain. So it could be connected to that. That's one thing I saw. Lamo afchoveva mim kol kedoshav beyadecha vehem teucho leraglecha isa davrotecha Torah tziva lanu. Oh, wait. Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha kehilat Yaakov. Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha kehilat Yaakov vayehi B'Yeshurun melech Behita Rashi Amicha Shiftei Israel Yechi Ruven Ve'al Yomad Vayehi Metav Mispar וזאת ליהודה ויאמר שם אדוני כל יהודה ואל עמו תביאנו ידיו רב לו עזר מצריו תהיה וללוי אמר תומך ואורך לאיש חסידך שנסיתו במסע תריבהו על מי מריבה האומר לאביהו ולאמו לא ראי טוב ואת אחיו לא הכיר ואת בנו לא ידע, כי שמרו אמרתך ובריתך ינצורו יורו משפטך ליעקב ותורתך לישראל ישימו כתורה באפיך וכליל על מזבחך. ברך אדוני חילו ופועל ידיו תרצה מחץ מתניים כמייו ומשנאיו מן יקומון לבנימין אמר ידיד אדוני ישכון לבטח עליו חופף עליו כל היום ובין כתפיו. שכן וליוסף אמר מבורכת אדוני ארצו ממגד שמיים מטל ומתהום ורובצת תחת וממגד תבואות שמש וממגד קרש ירחים ומראש ההרי קדם וממגד גבעות עולם וממגד ארץ ומילואה ורצון שוכני שנאת אהבותה לראש יוסף ולקדקוד נזיר חייו בכושורו הדר לא וכנרם כנב בהם עמים ינגח יחדו ארץ והם רבבות אפרים והם אלפי מנשה ולזבולון אמר אמר שמח זבולון בצאותיך ויששכר באוהליך עמים הר יקראו שם יזבחו זבחי צדק. כי שפיים ינקו וספוני תמוני חול ולגד אמר ברוך מרחיב גד כלביא שכן וטרף זרועיו כדקוד ויראו ראשית לו כי שם חלקת מחוקק צפון ויהי ראשי עם צדקת אדוני עשו משפטיו עם ישראל ולדן אמר דן גור אריה יזקנק מן הבשן. So that's interesting. Yizanek. Zanek apparently means to spring forth, which you definitely could connect with youthfulness, whereas Zaken means elderly. It's also connected with a beard. It implies a long beard. Min Bashan ule Naftali Amar Naftali Savaratzon umale birkat Adonai Yam vedarom yerasha ule asher Amar Baruch mivanim asher yehi ratzui vechayav vetovel bashemen raglo. So that's interesting. I wonder why this says Asher is the most blessed among children. Because here it could say that Asher is the most Ashur, but it doesn't. It uses Baruch. And so it's not purely like obviously if you know Hebrew you're going to get the pun because Baruch and Berach and Asher means the same thing, more or less, close. Not the same exact thing. More like one who is blessed versus one who the blessings, I don't know, like one who blessed, like the, actually, never mind. It's one has to do with this idea of giving reverence and like blessing through that. The other is just the idea of being blessed. But also interesting because with a lot of these, they're connected to like the lion, or they're said to be like a lion. Like you have Gur used for Dan, you have Lavi used for, I want to say Lavi, where is it? God is a Lavi, Dan is a Gur. Interesting. Wait, where were we? All right, Naphtali. Oh, and then wait, does it say Gur Aryeh? Yeah, Gur Aryeh. So I use this both. But yeah, it's interesting that Asher. So anyway, I'm thinking maybe it's connected to this figure of because Asher is associated with lions, and so maybe it's kind of connecting there, and that's why it's saying that he's most blessed. But again, this is like my comparative theology approach, so I want to acknowledge that. Baruch mivanim asher yehi. Okay, wait, write that. Barzelu nechoshet mihin alecha ukeyamecha dehavecha. Ein kael yeshurun rochev shamayim be'ezrecha ובגאוותו שחקים ראונה. Wait, what's this? Chatan HaTorah be'eretz Yisrael. Wait. Chatan HaTorah be'eretz Yisrael be'Shabbat. Oh, Shishi. I guess it. I'm not really sure. I'll have to ask about that sometime to someone who would know. But it is interesting. So this idea of Rochev Shamayim, or the riding on the heavens, that's a title that's also used to apply to many other deities in the ancient world. But specifically Rochev Shamayim or Rakab Shamimu, that's used to refer to Baal as well. It's kind of interesting. Interesting. So later here, it says that is the abode of God. Kedem, not immemorial, but like since ancient times, or like primordial, like, always there, basically. Interesting. So here, because in ancient Canaan, El was seen to dwell at the source of the two rivers. So maybe that was connected to like a mountain that goes up to the sky, and so the two rivers go down from the mountain. I'm not really sure, but obviously there's a whole level that's used with this that's not applied to the ancient world. At least we don't know, because so much of the traditions were lost. But Me'ona Elohei kedem umitachat zrot olam vayigaresh mifanecha oyev vayomer hashmed Vayishkon Yisrael betach bahadar en Yaakov el eretz dagan v'tirosh afshamav yarfotar ashrecha Yisroel mikamocha So it's interesting because here you have. At first, I thought this was using yasha or like nasa, which is or a play on nasa, which is lifted up. But with the I know it is yash from the root yasha, which means delivered or saved. Oh no, sha. Badonai magen ezrecha v'asher cherev gavatecha vayikachashu oivecha lach ve'ata al ba'amotemu tidroch Vayal Moshe me'arvot Moav. El Nevo Rosh HaPisgat Asher Al Pnei Yerecho Ve'yarehu Adonai Et Kol Haaretz Et HaGilad Adan Ve'et Kol Naftali ואת ארץ אפרים ומנשה ואת כל ארץ יהודה עד הים האחרון ואת הנגב ואת הכיכר בקעת yeah, Becca. Wait, that doesn't make Bikat. Okay, this is weird. So, Bikat. This is actually really bizarre. I don't know how I didn't realize this before. BDB. Alright, so Baka. I know it means to weep. Maybe it's almost the idea of like weeping down or like the imprint in a valley. I'm like it's the weep between the mountains. I don't know. That's really a stretch. Okay, Baka. Here. To cleave, like, interesting. Wait, is there two meanings of Baka? There must be. Yeah, Bika. Wait a second. So you're telling me fraction. So a Beka can mean something that's broken. So Okay, this is actually really stupid. So I think that according to that, let me see if this is true. Google. Becca. Its etymology literally is from valley. So it means the valley, if I'm correct. Does it say? Okay, Bika. Wadi Ibika. Okay, this is fascinating. So it seems, okay, history. Let's see, I'm just, all right. Becca etymology. Hollow Syria. Becca meaning. Becca is a noun that refers to a broad valley. And AI doesn't know shit. It's not. Okay, wait here. Maybe Becca. Maybe a native name. Okay, maybe Wiktionary would have it. Let's see. Wiktionary. Becca. Does it? It doesn't have. How does it not have the etymology? Are you serious? Becca. This is annoying. Becca. Meaning. I'm just trying to prove my point here. All right. It's an Arabic word that means valley or lowlands. That's okay. So yeah, that makes sense because here isn't it can refer to a few things, including a valley and a governorate. So the Becca Valley literally means the valley. That's actually kind of freaking idiotic, if I'm going to be completely honest. Though I will accept that it's acceptable in a certain context because of the fact that Arabic has a different term for valley than yeah, okay, this is interesting because there's also another word for valley, which is emek. So Baka probably is a Levantine word that refers to the concept that we recognize as a wadi, or that is understood in Arabic as a wadi. But it is something that I need to look into more later. But I'm glad that I found that. Let's see, where is it? Of course, I can't find the video. Oh, here it is. All right. Where is it? Bikat. At Bikat Yericho. So that's referring to the Jordan Rift Valley, I'm guessing, if it's the quote unquote like the Becca Jericho. Yericho, Bikat Yericho, Yirat Marim ad Zoar, Vayomer Adonai elav, Zot haaretz asher nishbati, leAvraham, leYitzchak uleYaakov, leomer lezaracha etnena והרתיחה בעיניך ושמע לא תעבור וימת שם משה עבד אדוני בארץ מואב על פי אדוני ויקבור אותו בגיא בארץ מואב מול בית פאור ולא ידע איש את קבורתו עד היום הזה ומשה בן 120 שנה במותו לא קהתנו ולא נס לא לכו ויבכו בני ישראל את משה בערבות מואב 30 יום ויתמו ימי בכי אבל משה ויהושע בן נון מלא רוח חוכמה כי שמח משה את ידיו עליו וישמעו אליו בני ישראל ויעשו כאשר ציווה אדוני את משה ולא קם נביא עוד בישראל כמשה אשר ידעו אדוני פנים אל פנים לכל האותות והמופתים אשר שלחו אדוני לעשות בארץ מצרים לפרעה לכל עבדים ולכל ארצו ולכל היד החזקה ולכל המורא הגדול אשר עשה משה לעיני כל ישראל. חזק חזק ונתחזק. Interesting. So where does it refer to him as a ish? Ish. I could always look that up later. All right, so finish that off, and then in order to what was it? Just start the very beginning of. So we ended with a lamed and this is starting with a bet, so left. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz ve'aretz hayta tohu va'bohu v'choshech al pnei tehom ve'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim ויאמר אלוהים יאור ויהי ויראו אלוהים את האור כי טוב ויבדל אלוהים בין האור ובין החושך ויקרא אלוהים לאור יום ולחושך קרא לילה ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום אחד. All right, that's a good place to end off there. So ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה. All right, So I have a bit longer before I need to go. So we'll continue.
We end the Torah and we immediately begin the Torah.
Just like we did.
Many commentaries read the last few words of the Torah and connect it to the beginning of the Torah. In a few minutes, we'll discuss the ramifications of this. So in other words, the last three words are le'enei kol Yisrael, in the eyes of all of Israel. What's the first verse in the Torah? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So some people read it, in the eyes of all of Israel, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So for those of you who have Orchard of Delights, if you go to 𝐤ozot HaBracha, I have a very long, deep, and profound explanation of what does that mean? In the eyes of all of Israel, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But what we're going to concentrate is a different aspect here. Now, the way I translated the last few words is that Moshe did in the eyes of all of Israel. But if you look at the actual Hebrew, it says le'enei kol Yisrael. Usually, if you want to say in, it's the letter bet, b. And usually, if you want to say to, it's lamed. So here, if you read it like even more literal than the translation is, all the power and signs that Moshe did to the eyes of Israel. So that's what we want to discuss is, what does that mean? All of this he did to the eyes, not in the eyes. So first of all, I'm going to point out what Rashi says. And for those who have Orchard, you'll see how significant this Rashi is. We're going to pick one aspect. So Rashi says, so what are all these wonders that Moshe did? What was this powerful sign that he performed? So Rashi says something we never would have thought of. When Moshe broke the tablets, we would think the splitting of the sea, the 10 plagues, receiving the 10 commandments. That's the awesome things that Moshe did in the eyes of all of Israel, to the eyes of all of Israel. Rashi says the most amazing thing is he broke the tablets. Now, we're going to look at one aspect of that, but I'm going to point out now that the word here that Moshe did is the word asa. And this word, in a different form, comes as the last word of creation. Asher bara Elokim la'asot. This is at the end of Shabbat, the end of creation. All the things that God did to do. So everyone asked, wait, that's redundant. Like, what is that last word, la'asot? Asher bara Elokim la'asot, that God made to do. In English, it certainly doesn't make sense. Even in Hebrew, the question is, what is that word doing there? So it's explained, that word means litaken, to fix. And what's the significance of this?
The first making is perfect. The second is the reparation.
And Judaism is that when God finished creation, he didn't really finish it. He left it for human beings to become partners with God in the development of the world, the fixing of the world. This is where we get the concept tikkun olam. All that God created to do. In other words, he created all of this now for human beings to become partners with God in the management of the world and the development of the world and the fixing of the world. So here, we're going to read the same thing. All that Moshe did to fix the eyes of Israel. Now we have to discuss, what does that mean? So Rashi tells us what it's talking about, Moshe breaking the tablets. So everyone asks, how could it be that a generation that 40 days before had a revelation of God that was never before and has never been since the giving of the Torah at Sinai? And this, of course, comes after 10 plagues, after the splitting of the sea, after the beginning of God providing the manna, and the revelation at Sinai. And 40 days later, we're worshiping a golden calf. How could it be? So one of the answers is that their eyes weren't fixed. They saw.
Again, I think it's interesting because there's a lot of people who they look at the golden calf, they're like, oh, see, they were worshiping another god. No, the issue with the golden calf was that people were worshiping something that was material. And like, yeah, well, it's nice to have like a depiction of what you want to worship or whatever. The problem is, and there's kind of the notion that you get from reading like deeper elements of Judaism is that even if there wasn't something wrong inherently with creating images, which I think that itself is debated on in Judaism, the issue is that people over time will start worshiping it because people are fallible, which, I mean, I can understand, but like, even without images, I mean, look at the people who worship money. They put money above all else. Like, I think the issue is that people end up thinking that it means one thing and they stop there and they take it super hard because they figure, you know, we need to take this super seriously. But in the process of doing that, a lot of people end up failing in that regard on other ways just because they think that they're so secure in doing this one thing when in reality it's just one element of it. But like, you know, for instance, if you believe that there is something inherent, I'm going to just continue because I don't have much time left.
All of this, they experienced all of this, but it obviously was somewhat superficial. They didn't see in a way that they fully integrated this new revelation and relationship with God. There's an expression that the eyes are a window to the soul. And this is actually true of all the 5 physical senses. That each of the physical senses is very physical, but it's the window to the soul. The soul is nourished. The soul can react. The soul can be in relationship to the physical world only through what it sees and hears and smells and touches and tastes. But especially sight. Especially sight. That's why there's such an emphasis on what's called shmirat einayim, in guarding your eyes. Not to look at things that you shouldn't look at, or look at things that will leave a negative or a...
Hey, Graham.
Hey, Dario.
Yeah, sorry, I meant to send you the link earlier. I sent it to you on my other account, but because I don't have access to my main Discord on my phone anymore. But yeah, at least you're here now. And it's probably better because I was able to get through everything I needed to. So yeah, because I need to get going soon, but at least we can have some discussion now.
Okay.
Provocative, what's called rishimu,
withdrawal?
English. A mark
on
the soul. And we all know that I'm sure we could all look into our past where we saw something. Could be a movie, it could be real life, it could have been a tragedy that leaves a strong impression. Rishimu means impression. And sometimes for the good, and sometimes for the very negative, that we can't get it out of our mind, the image that we saw. So that's what we're told, to be very careful with the eyes. So here, Rashi is alluding to that the last thing that Moshe wants to do for Israel. Remember, this parsha is called 𝐤ozot HaBracha. This is the blessing that Moshe blessed the people. As an aside, this is just a beautiful way to end the Torah with blessings. Now, this is after the whole book of Deuteronomy, which is full of rebuke, of what we've discussed many times, blessings and curses, of exile and redemption. It's in a certain way, there's a lot of, call it heaviness in the book of Deuteronomy. But here, Moshe ends with blessings. And the last, there's a lot of, call it heaviness in the book of Deuteronomy. But here, Moshe ends with blessings. And the last thing is what Moshe wants to do is fix the eyes of all of Israel. So we're going to take this a little bit further. Now we're going to go back to what does it mean to connect the last three words of the Torah with the first words of the Torah. In the eyes of all of Israel, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So one of the explanations, and it's one of the foundations of Hasidic thought, is what's called chidush, renewal, rebirth, making everything new. Now, of course, that's a tremendous challenge. And this is one of the great innovations of the Baal Shem Tov, is that he came to wake up Jewish consciousness to get beyond rote and routine and to approach life on a day-by-day basis, a mitzvah-by-mitzvah basis, with full of enthusiasm and newness. So along with many, many other explanations, and again, I refer you to Orchard of Delights on this Parsha, is in the eyes of all of Israel, we should be able to see how God is recreating the world at every moment. So this is just a beautiful way to connect the end of the Torah and the beginning. As you get to the end, it's like, we're done, we're finished, now what? So we start the Torah immediately as the message that the holidays are now over. The Torah is over. So what do? You start again. That's what we do. It's a simple message, but to actually live it is obviously more of a challenge. So now we're just going to look at a few aspects. In Pirkei Avot, if anyone wants to look it up or look it up later, in the second chapter, the 13th Mishnah. So this is when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he had 5 main students. And he said to them, go out in the world and tell me what's in a few words, what's the best way to have in approaching life. So Rabbi Eli, words, what's the best way to approach life? What's the best attribute to have in approaching life? So Rabbi Eliezer said, the first one says, ayin tov, a good eye. If you have a good eye, so you see things in the positive. And what could be a better attitude about life? Rabbi Yoshua said, a good friend. Now, we don't have time to analyze it, but each one of these, there's such beautiful ideas about a good friend. Rabbi Yossi said a good neighbor. Rabbi Shimon said, ha'ro'eh et nolad. No, excuse me. Ha'ro'eh ani et, excuse me. Yes, ha'ro'eh et nolad. One who sees, nolad literally means birth. one sees in the birth of a situation what will come from it. And the last one is Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, who said, Lev Tov, a good heart. So it's interesting. The first one is a good eye. The last one is a good heart. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, of all these answers, I choose a good heart. But if we really think about it, a good heart is dependent on a good eye. Because the opposite of a good eye is what's called ayin ra. It's called the evil eye. In other words, do we see life in a positive way? Or do we see everything in a negative way? If we see everything in a negative way, how can you have a good heart? But if you see everything in the positive, then you can have a good heart. So this is a very, very deep connection. And now we're going to see it's even deeper, because this is pointed out by all the commentaries. What's the last letter of the Torah? It's a lamed. The last word is Yisrael. So the last letter is lamed. What's the first letter of the Torah? A bet. What does that spell? Lev. A good heart. So here we are coming to the end of the holidays. And we could say, well, bottom line, what are we supposed to come out with? What have we accomplished? How are we going to be different this year? And we could answer very simply, do you have a good heart? Are you ready to approach a new year with a good eye and a good heart? And so going back to the broken tablets, there's a midrash that says that the Satan came, and he showed the people, like in their imagination. Here, the midrash presents it as if it's a physical thing, and in a certain sense it could be, but in everyone's mind it looked real. He showed Moshe's coffin as if Moshe was dead. And so therefore the people said, we don't know what happened to Moshe. We need to pick new leaders. And that's how they made the golden calf. So here again, this idea of a good eye or an evil eye. So Satan came and he showed them like a picture in their minds of Moshe is dead. And they went after that false imagination, and it ended up that they made a golden calf. So here, the last thing that Moshe wants to do is he wants to fix the eyes of all of Israel, especially because we're right here, we're ending the Torah, and then we're going to begin the Torah. And we want to begin it with a good heart. And as we said, a good heart is dependent on an ayin tov, on having good eyes. Now, in the Parsha, there is another allusion to eyes. And this is a verse that says, it's for those who want to look it up later, it's chapter 33, verse 28. It says, Vayishkon Yisrael betach badad, and Israel will dwell in security alone. Ein Yaakov. Now I'm going to translate it like a drush. Ein Yaakov is like ayin, the eye of Yaakov. El Eretz Dagan Tirosh Av Shamav Yerafu Tal. So it's translated that Israel will dwell in security alone. Ein Yaakov actually means, Ein here in this context means as Yaakov had said to them. Ein here means like or similar to something that Yaakov had said before. So Rashi explains that before Yaakov died, he said to his sons that God will come and he will take you out of Egypt.
Hey, Trevor.
He will bring you back to Israel. And that's why he insisted on being buried in Israel, because he wanted to pave the way for them all to come back. So that's what Rashi says it means here. In other words, Israel will dwell securely alone, like Yaakov said. But here, it actually says Ein Yaakov, which you could translate as the eye of Yaakov. So what does this mean? Remember, one of the 5 opinions of the best way to be is haro'eh et hanolad, who sees in the birth of a situation what will come from it. So here we see Yaakov seeing into the future. Here they're in Egypt, and it's him and his family. They came down to Egypt with 70
I wonder
souls.
if ro'eh nolad could literally mean one who witnesses birth. I mean, I know for certain you won't be the same after seeing that. I don't know for certain because I've seen it. I just know for certain because it's that powerful of an experience, for better or for worse. Apparently some guys pass out.
I was going to say, yeah, you don't forget the experience.
Yeah, that's a real, that's one hell of an initiation. Speaking of Reshima, you can't unsee that. That's a mark on your on your soul.
Yeah, initiation for a lot of people in birth.
Yeah, both for the birth and the people watching.
What would occur? And he promised them that you will make it back to Israel. You'll dwell there securely. So this is like a prophetic eye who sees the birth. So now we go back to connecting the last words of the Torah to the first words of the Torah. In the eyes of all of Israel, in the beginning, as it were, God gave birth to the heavens and the earth. So in other words, as we approach the new year, we're encouraged to see how every day, every situation, every mitzvah, every opportunity is new. Wasn't here before, it won't be there in the future. To live like that takes a lot of spiritual work. But that is the goal. That is the goal. We're at the end of the holidays, and we want to take the newness and the joy and the introspection and the good eye and the good heart into a good year, a new year. We'll just point out that this expression, Ein Yaakov, equals in Gematria 312, which equals the word Chadash, new. So like Rosh Chodesh, Chadash, a new month, a new year, a new day, a new minute. So the eye of Yaakov, who sees the birth, is seeing the birth in every moment. So that's a great challenge. We'll end our going through the entire Torah. We'll end with a blessing. And I'm going to add one other thing, that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, so his last years of his life, around the last 10 years, he was encouraging everyone to learn about Mashiach, to talk about Mashiach, to anticipate the Mashiach. And he was known to have said many, many times, open your eyes, Mashiach is here. So this is based on an idea that one of the words for future in Hebrew is atid, the future.
Is it equal to Chadash?
That word is used in Megillat Esther to mean to be prepared. To be prepared. So it's explained that the future is already prepared in the present. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe was saying, like, if we wanted bad enough, if we could do it, we could open our eyes and Mashiach is here. So there's a very similar thing that Reb Shlomo, that when he wanted to explain looking at something in a deep, deep way, he would say, you have to look at it with eyes of Mashiach. In other words, the future, but already in the present.
Mashiach mentality.
And so when we envision Mashiach, when we look at how things are born and we see what can come from them, so that helps bring the future into the present. So I want to give everyone a blessing that as we end the holidays and get ready to dive into the year, that we do it with a good eye, with a good heart, and we open our eyes to our own potential and not being blind to the negativity in the world, but to open our eyes to the goodness and try to live life like that.
Shalom. This week we read the portion of וזאת HaBracha, beginning in Deuteronomy, Sefer Dvarim, chapter 33. We read of the beautiful, mystical, encompassing blessing that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our master, gave to all of the children of Israel, each
And the previous one, I had no idea Moses was an optometrist.
That was good. Let's see. What can I find?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I've known Jewish optometrists. There's nothing wrong with that. I just didn't know Moses was one of them.
I know. Let's see. What can I find?
Chag Sameach, Simchat Torah. What a name for a festival. The joy of the Torah. What other nation, what other religion do you have where the holiest book of that religion is beautifully dressed in its finery with crowns and silver? We hold the Torah in such awe, with such reverence, with such respect, that when the Torah is carried around, paraded around the shul, the entire community stands up in honor. We kiss the Torah. We bow towards the Torah. Our entire lives are molded by the mitzvot of the Torah. And then Simchat Torah. We finish reading the Torah. There's great joy. We have finally finished the book. We take the Torahs out from the ark. We dance with the Torahs around the shul, around the community. The great joy of finally finishing the cycle of the Torah. And then we immediately start again, because this is what we are all about. It is finishing your favorite book and saying, I want to read it again because I know I'm going to find something more, some deeper insight. When I look at the Torah, and I read it every single week as the Baal Koreh of my shul, there's something very beautiful. The very final word of the Torah is Yisrael, finished with the letter Lamed. The very first word of the Torah is Bet, Bereshit. And when we take the last letter, the Lamed, and we put it together with the first letter, the Bet, we form the word Leiv, which means the heart. The heart of the Jewish people is the study of Torah. It is the beating heart that has sustained us throughout our generations. And here's another beautiful insight. If the first word is Bereshit in the beginning, and the last word is Lamed, is Yisrael at the end, what is the middle words of the Torah? Interesting. The middle words of the Torah are the words Darosh, Darash, and you shall surely interpret. What an insight. The Leiv of the Jewish people is the Torah. The pumping heart that sustains the Jewish people throughout the generations is, of course, the Torah. And what makes it so unique is Dorosh, Dorash, says the Torah. Continue to study it, look into it, find the insights, grow as a person. Every single cycle that I've done through this Torah, I celebrate my achievements. Whether it has been going through another year of Daf Yomi, whether it's been finishing the Parsha with the commentary of Rashi or someone else, or having listened to the myriad of shiurim over the course of the year, every single year I'm inspired, I'm excited, I've learned so much, I've grown as a person. And thus, Simchat Torah for me is a time in which I celebrate my learning. In the same way as someone who finishes their degree celebrates with a valedictory and their celebration, this is our valedictory for the Jewish people, in which we celebrate the conclusion and the starting of the Torah. And how beautifully do we do it? We have two weddings. We have a Chatan Torah, the groom of the Torah, the person who finishes, is honored with reading the last few lines of the Torah. And we have Chatan Breshit, the bridegroom who starts the Torah once again. This is the Kihem Chayenu V'orech Chamenu. These words have sustained the Jewish people throughout the generations. So what is the most exciting day and the best day to be in shul? It has to be Simchat Torah. If you go to shul on Yom Kippur, it's amazing, it's inspiring, but it's a heavy day. If you want to really experience Judaism, get to shul on a Simchat Torah. See the dancing, see the celebration, see the singing, see the Torahs actually dancing around the community. And then you'll know what it means to be Jewish. So what is the message I want to leave you on Simchat Torah? The message is as follows. Some of us associate Judaism with the heavy days. They only go to shul on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The day that I would love you to be in shul is Simchat Torah. Because on that day you see Judaism vibrant, alive, dancing, happy, celebrating. And this is my challenge to you for this year, is connect to our heritage. Connect to this book, these scrolls. Find for you, if you have never read through the Torah before, make it your challenge for this week. Parshah Shavua, every single week, go through the Torah. If you're a master of the Torah, you know the Parashiyot, pick a new commentary. Work your way through a new commentary, because there are so many ideas that are there that one can derive from the Torah. And next year, not only will it be Simchat Torah, celebrating the Torah, but you'll be able to celebrate with everybody your achievements, your learning. And the more you learn, the deeper the connection, the greater the joy. Chag Sameach.
To be fair, I can see how some people might prefer the Kama Sutra as a book they would like to read and reread again right away. Okay.
Yeah, but for different reasons.
Well, it's still a holy book, you know.
I think it's spelled with a different spelling for holy.
Well, it is technically a holy book. It is part of their scripture. But yeah, I know what you mean too. Good one. Thank.
Yeah. Let's see, what can I find?
If you want to understand Jews and Judaism, think of Simchat Torah. It is the only festival that is the pure creation of the Jewish people. All the others were either written in the Torah or came about through historical events like Purim and Hanukkah. Not so Simchat Torah, which isn't mentioned in the Torah, isn't mentioned elsewhere in Tanakh, isn't even mentioned in the Talmud. It appeared for the first time in the early Middle Ages. Now, you might have thought that with all that persecution and dispersion, Jews would have created a fast, but they didn't. They created a day of pure joy. And joy in what? In the Torah, a book of law. Now just imagine a group of English or American judges or law professors so seized with the beauty of their subject that they dance around the Supreme Court holding books of legislation in their arms. You're right, it couldn't happen. On the 14th of October 1663, the great diarist Samuel Pepys visited a synagogue in London. The day just happened to be Simchat Torah. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. People dancing around in a house of God. He'd never seen anything like it. But that's the unique feature of Simchat Torah. The majesty and impartiality of the law you can find elsewhere. But Simchat Torah, the joy of the law, for that you need to go to shul. So if you want to understand Jews and Judaism, think of Simchat Torah, and we realize that Judaism is really a love story. The story of the love of a people for a book, the book with which we dance on Simchat Torah as if it were a bride. Chag Sameach.
Yeah, I still maintain Sabotage Zevi took that whole, Torah is a bride thing way too far.
Yeah, it's one thing to dance with the Torah and to kiss it, but to actually go as far as to say okay, I'm going to marry the Torah. I mean, thankfully, I think that's as far as Oh, you mean in the other poll?
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Never mind.
It's fine to go to first base with the Torah. You don't want to get a home run. Yeah.
Oh, that's not the joke I was making. Because according to history, apparently there was in one of the Sabbatean congregations, the rabbi's wife was dancing around like they were dancing around with the rabbi's wife like a Torah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I can definitely see where they could get that from. Yep.
Let's see. This should be good.
What is the holiday of Simchat Torah? Simchat Torah is a Jewish holiday that's right at the end of the high holiday season. We begin the high holiday season with the birth of the world, with the birth of mankind, which is known as Rosh Hashanah. And we celebrate 21 days, which is known as the high holidays. It all comes together at the very final holiday, which is known as Simchat Torah, which means rejoicing with the Torah. This holiday represents the day that we finish reading the 5 books of Moses. You see, the 5 books of Moses is read every single Saturday throughout the year. We finish the final chapter on this day. But it's not only the day that we finish, it is also the day that we begin right away from Genesis. This is known as the most joyous day in the Jewish calendar. So much so that we actually take the Holy Bible, the scrolls, the Holy Torah, and we take it out of the ark and we dance with it. We dance with it with such great jubilation, with such excitement, that it's very uncharacteristic, because usually we take out the Torah to study from it. But this is one day a year that we take out the Torah from the ark and we dance with it. We do circle dancing. We lift up the Torah and we show how proud we are of the Torah, and the joy and the happiness that we have during this holiday is a joy that stays with us throughout the whole year. God has taught us the only way to serve Him has to be through joy, through happiness, through gladness. This is what Simchat Torah is all about. We come to synagogue and we go to the ark and we take the Torah out. You see, the Torah in itself have no feet. We become one with the Torah. When we dance with the Torah, we become one with the Torah. And that is how we celebrated the culmination, the end of the whole high holiday season. We celebrated dancing in joy. We are so proud of who we are. We are proud of what we have. And we are proud to show the world that what is our guiding light? It is the Torah. Unfortunately, last year, October 7, 2023, the anniversary of the massacre, the barbaric massacre, occurred on Simchat Torah. And our enemies tried to dampen our spirits. They chose the happiest day of the year to create this massacre. What we do in return, our responses, we turn this day into the most joyous day in spite of them. We will not have a dampened Simchat Torah, but rather we're going to have this year, we're going to dance so much more so. We're going to have l'chaims. We're going to rejoice more than ever before. So our enemies will know that nothing they can do can dampen our spirit and our joy and our pride of who we are. So make it a point to come to synagogue this year and celebrate Simchat Torah. Let's dance away for a new, bright, happy year of peace, a year of prosperity, a year of great health, and a year that anything that you need, God will give you. God bless you. God loves you.
A year brighter than 1,000 suns.
Good morning, everyone, and Chag Sameach. Tonight we begin the Shemini Atzeret, and tomorrow night, Thursday night, everyone's invited to Palm Beach Synagogue as we celebrate the most joyous day on the calendar, Simchat Torah. And this year is the first anniversary of October 7th, which occurred in Israel on Simchat Torah. And many people are asking, how can we dance when it's the anniversary of the date that we experienced the worst atrocity since the Holocaust? A number of years ago, the Dalai Lama sent a message to Elie Wiesel, and he said, I want to ask you, how is it that the Jewish people have endured and survived for 2,000 years in exile? Me and my people have been exiled from our homeland, and we want to know the secret of the Jewish people. And I believe one of the answers, if not the answer to how we survive, is 2 words in the Torah. At the end of Moses' life, which we're going to read about on the morning of Simchat Torah as we conclude the Torah, he says to the Jewish people, I've placed before you a blessing and a curse, life and death. And then he says, Ubacharta b'chayim, you shall choose life. And the question is, who would choose death over life? Isn't it obvious that we're going to choose life? And perhaps the answer is that what Moses was saying was not you should choose life over death, but rather, Ubacharta b'chayim, you should choose life in the face of death. And this has been the secret of the Jewish people. For 2,000 years, we've experienced exile, expulsions, persecution, oppression, inquisitions and intifadas, Holocaust, pogroms, inquisitions. But in the face of death, we said what we're going to say in the Hallel this morning, and we say every day of the holiday. Lo amut ki echya, I will not die, but I will live, as King David says. V'asaper masayah, I will declare the greatness of God. 3 years after the Holocaust, 6 million of our brothers and sisters, sons and daughters were murdered. We went back to Israel. We said, in the face of death, we choose life. And that's what we witnessed this year. October 7th, we witnessed the worst evil. The brutal murder of innocent men, women, and children, Holocaust survivors, pregnant mothers, babies, burnt alive. And in the face of that evil and death, the Jewish people stood up and said 3 words, Am Yisrael Chai, as an anthem and as a prayer. We will live. We choose life in the face of death. And that's why tomorrow night at Palm Beach Synagogue, we invited 5 Nova survivors who ran for 12 hours from bullets and terror and survived. And what are they saying? Ubacharta b'chaim, we choose life in the face of death. And one of the couples that are here to dance with us got engaged this year after October 7th, once again saying, Ubacharta b'chaim, we choose love and life in the face of death. One of the remarkable stories that just occurred in Israel was there's a woman by the name of Daron Katz. On October 7th, she and her 2 children, Raz, 4 years old, and Aviv, 2 years old, were taken hostage into Gaza. And they spent 49 days, mother and a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, in captivity. And they were released, and Israel freed them in a deal 49 days after they were abducted. They spent 49 days in captivity. Just 2 weeks ago, Daron Katz posted a picture of she and her husband and her 4-year-old Raz and 2-year-old Aviv with her pregnant belly. And she said, I'm delighted to announce that I'm pregnant, and my husband and I are expecting our 3rd child. And she said, having experienced the worst evil and nearly losing my life, facing death, to be able to bring life into the world now, literally almost 9 months after she was freed from captivity, she said that is the greatest blessing, to bring life in this world after experiencing so much death. And her own brother and mother were murdered on October 7th. And a number of other friends and family from Kibbutz Nir Oz are still in captivity. But she said the following words. She said, giving birth to a baby, despite all the evil, is my ray of sunshine in the midst of all the darkness. When we come to Shul tomorrow night, let us remember the 2 words that Moses taught us 3,300 years ago. Ubacharta b'chaim. As a Jewish people, we always choose life in the face of death. That is our sunshine in the darkness. And yes, as we've been saying every day, and we've been seeing every day in Israel and around the world, the Jewish people declare in word and in action, Am Yisrael Chai. Join us and let us dance, not for the past, but for the bright future of the Jewish people. Chag Sameach.
Because of all the wondrous things that he did in front of the eyes of the entire people. What did he do in the presence of all the Jews? When he came down off the mountain the first time, he saw that the Jews had made a golden calf, and he dropped the tablets, the 10 commandments, and he broke them. The final holiday of this long holiday season is the holiday of Simchat Torah. It's a holiday unto itself, not just the last days of Sukkot. And what it is a lot of dancing, a lot of joy, celebrating the completion of the reading of the Torah. Because we read a portion every week on Shabbos, and it takes a year from Simchat Torah to Simchat Torah, and on this day we finish reading the entire Torah and start all over again. The obvious question is, and there's always a question, right? The obvious question is, what does this have to do with the season? The Torah was given in the spring on Shavuos. So wouldn't it make more sense to begin the study of the Torah, the reading of the Torah, on Shavuos and finish it on Shavuos? Why are we celebrating the Torah after Yom Kippur? Because everything in Torah, everything in the practice of Torah is meaningful and purposeful and necessary. So why is it right and necessary to celebrate the completion of the Torah after Yom Kippur rather than Shavuos? So let's take a deeper look. The relationship between Jews and Torah works two ways, like every relationship, of course. Is the Torah necessary for the benefit of the Jews, or are the Jewish people necessary for the benefit of the Torah? It's a very good question. And there are good arguments on both sides, because what would the Torah be if there is no Jew to keep it? And on the other hand, what would a Jew be if he didn't have a Torah to follow, to fulfill? So the relationship is a two-way relationship. There is the aspect where Torah benefits from the Jewish people, and there's the aspect where the Jewish people benefit from the Torah. Now, listen to this amazing, amazing idea. What are the last words in the Torah? The concluding words of the entire Torah. A praise of Moshe, his greatness, his passing away. There will never be another prophet like Moshe. But then it goes on to say, because of all the wondrous things that he did in the awesome wilderness in front of the eyes of the entire people. So we have here three elements. Number one, all the miracles that he performed in Egypt, the miracles that he performed in the wilderness,
I want to tell the Rebbe the words of the new song that we're singing with Mashiach, right? So I'm just going to read him. Am Yisrael, have no fear. Mashiach will be here this year. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. Okay? Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, oh yeah, Am Yisrael, have no fear, Mashiach will be this year. Am Yisrael, have no fear, Mashiach will be here this year. We want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we don't